Mar, which is at the bottom of, towards the bottom of Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. So today's Daf is Daf Lamed Beis, and we're up to Amar Mar. I think that's about 10 lines from the bottom of Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. And what we learned yesterday was about a story about a fellow who had a tree. He had a fig tree, and he told his friend, "You know what? Go help yourself to Ta'anim. Help yourself to Ta'anim, and don't take as much as you want. I'm giving you a basket. You can fill this basket and take Ta'anim." So the halacha is that there's a machlokes. Rebbe holds that if the person who gave the parish, if the benefactor was a chaver, then whoever has those pairs, whoever takes those pairs, can assume for sure that the owner took off trumas and maasros, because there's a chazak on the chaver that he doesn't allow any produce to leave his control unless that produce was mesukim. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said there's another halacha. The halacha is you're not allowed to be tarim shalom and amukah. You cannot take truma off if the truma that you designate is not side by side with the tevel that you're being masakin. And being that after this fellow picked these tainim, he didn't see anybody do a transaction, do a truma, so he has to assume that in fact he for sure has to take trumas and maasros. So that was the shaila that we started with yesterday. So Dr. Gemar, Amar Mar, Amed Devar Mamurim, when do we say that it's a suffix if they've taken trumas or maasros, and now you don't have to, and now it's a suffix if you have to take off trumas and maasros from your tainim, ba'amoritz. That's if the benefactor was an amoritz. Aval b'chover, if he was a tamid chacham, oichel, you can eat the tainim if you receive them, the einay tzarech la'aser, and you for sure do not have to take off maaser. Divrei Rebbe, that's the words. Those are the words of Rebbe. Frag the Gemara, Hi Ama Oretz, the Ka'amar Leilaman. Who is the Ama Oretz talking to? I Lema, the Ka'amar La'ama Oretz Chavrei. So if the person who received the Paris was also an Ama Oretz, Ma'asran Demai, the first case of the Brisa says that if it wasn't Ama Oretz, it's Ma'asran Demai. It's a suffix if the owner took off Meiser. So we're telling the second guy, who's also an Amoritz, you have to take off Meiser again because maybe he didn't take off Meisers for you. Mitzayis, would the receiver, if he's an Amoritz, would he listen to you? Of course he wouldn't listen to you. And Rashi says something interesting. It's the second wide line of Rashi. Rashi says, Mitzayis lach lasure safik, Amoritz chavrei mehem l'tfei minoch. This Amoritz trusts his friend, the Amoritz, more than the rabbi. So he's for sure not listening to you. That's right. Man chavet negedov tigit and tigit haknosh kakov, right? Ella ba'ama oretz to ka'amar lechaver. Elamai. It's speaking that the recipient is a chaver. So let's look at the sefer. I'm a sefer. Nirin divrei midiver abu. Nirin dvarai. Rebbe said, I like my shita more than I like my father's shita, and I'm the one who says that the Talmid Chacham will be very concerned to make sure that it's Mesukin, and the Talmid Chacham won't be so makbid on Eidim and Amukaf because he wants to protect the recipient from being over and aver. Mutav sheyechshdu chaverim litram shalom and Amukaf. I'd rather be koshid that the Talmid Chacham is going to relax the rule about, he's not relaxing, he's being over it. He's being over the Rabbanan that says you're not allowed to take truma if the truma is not side by side with the tevel, but he wants to be concerned that the Amoritz shouldn't eat tevel. So Zak Gemara, Amoritz, my boy Hassan. What is an Amoritz doing here? Didn't we just say that the recipient was a chaver? That's how it was in the last example. So Gemara, Amravina, Reisha be'Amoritz, she'amar lachaver. The Reisha is an Amoritz who gave the parish to the Chaver. But Seifa is the Chaver Shomer La'Amoritz. The Seifa is speaking about a Chaver who gave it to the Amoritz. You're going to ask me the Amoritz doesn't listen anyway? The Amoritz will say, I trust the Talmid Chacham also. The Amoritz also will listen. The church is the Chaver Achashoimai. So what happened was Reuven who was a chaver, he let Shimon take payers, and when he told Shimon you could take payers, Levi, who was also a chaver, overheard this transaction. So Levi knows that these payers that Shimon the Amoritz took, he got them from Reuven, who was a chaver. So therefore, the chaver will know that if I get invited to lunch by Shimon and he serves me these figs, I'm allowed to eat them because I know the origins of these figs are from Reuven. That's right. Oh, that's right. Nichas the Ketanians. Not only is the Eshek of the fag, it is Nichas the fag. Yeah. Zok to Gemara. So now let's analyze the machlokes. Rabbi Savar, Rabbi holds Oisei Chaver Oichel. That second chaver is allowed to eat from these pairs. And he doesn't have to take off Meiser again, even though he's getting it from Shimon, who's an Amoritz. Surely the first chaver who released the pairs to the Amoritz, surely Reuven, who released the pairs to Shimon, surely he was masaking them. He took off Kumas and Meisers. That's the svar of Rebbe. But Rabbi Shimon the second chaver should not eat it. Achi Aser, because Reuben probably did not take off Meisers, but the Shalelech should do Chaverim, Litroim Shaloim Namuk. I'm sorry? I assume he would have to know. As soon as asking, how does he know when he's coming to eat lunch by Shimon? How does he know those same Tatum? Maybe they're different Tatum. I don't know. I guess you would have to have a plumber or something. You know what a plumber is, right? I figured. Rebbe told him, Mutov sheyechidu chaverim litram shaloi min hamukav val yachilu amei haaretz l'tfeilim. The makim of what's the svar? What's the machlokes? Exactly what is the nakuda that they're arguing upon? Rebbe savar nichile lechaver de laavad hu asira klila v'loy leavad amoritz isur rabba. A chaver is happier being over a small avera, but thereby saving the oni or the Amoritz from being over at Isser Misa. Eating Tvelim, I think there's an Isser Misa Veshamayim. Kalila is the Isser Durabanan to be Turim Shalom and Amukah. Rabbi Shimon Lil Savar Nichale Lechavid Levid Amoritz Isser Rabba, but the EU Afilu Isser Klila Evid. No, he's makbid. He doesn't do anything even slightly wrong. And if this fellow's need Tvelim, I'm sorry, I can't help you. So Tosfos brings up a beautiful point. Tosfos says we had a story in the second Shabbos. If someone put dough on the side of an oven on Shabbos, if it stays there long enough to bake, this person is over a malacha dairaisa. And over there, the halacha is you're not allowed to take it out, even though taking it out only involves an issue d'rabbanan. We don't tell you to do an avera, even though it's a small avera, in order to protect your friend. So over here, why would a chaver say, I'll do a small avera to protect my friend? You're not supposed to do that. So Tosfos answers, Hachashani, true goyim loy laver. When I'm sending in pairs, I'm not just a question of me protecting him from the avera. I'm actually feeding him iser. True omer lolakait the savish asur. Masha'enken hid the class with Tanner. He brought it upon himself. He put the dough in the oven. So somebody asked me if somebody is in danger of losing his life, of course you're going to be Machal Shabbos to save him. So what if this fellow put pas in the Tanner with Eidim and Asra? So now he's going to lose his life. Are you mechuyev to go take the pas out? Because there is a matter of love. What's the difference if he's drowning and you Machal Shabbos to save him, or if he did it with Eidim and Asra? So I'm not sure what the halach is. But that's what someone brought.
Who asked that question? No,
Is that a compliment or is that an insult?
It's a compliment.
Moish Weinberg.
Really, it's a very good, very good idea.
The question how that works. What happened if Nasnu be'ilam L'mayla me'asar tefachim. You put your Eruv on a tree that's above the level of 10 tefachim. The significance of 10 tefachim is if you have something in Rishus Harabim, if it's above 10 tefachim, it's going to be Rishus Hayachid. But the Gemara is going to get into details of that. So Nafla be'ila l'mayla me'asar tefachim. You put it into a tree, but it was above 10 tefachim from the ground. Ein Eruvei Eruv. It won't be a good Eruv. L'mata me'asar tefachim. But if you put it below 10 tefachim, within the airspace of Rishus Harabim, Eruvei Eruv. Nosna b'bar. What if you put it into a bar that was in Rishus Harabim? I feel almost meya ama Eruvei Eruv. Even if it's 100 amas deep, it's a good Eruv. So we'd have to understand why, because that's also Rishus Harabim. So I'm sure the Gemara is going to explain it. Zokte the Gemara, Yosef, Rab Chia bar Abba, Rab Asi, V'Rava bar Nosen. There were 3 Talmidei Chacham sitting and bringing together. The Yosef, Rab Nachman Gabayu, and Rab Nachman was sitting amongst them. The Yasvi, the Ka'amri, and they brought up the following difficulty that they had with the Mishnah. Hi Elon, this tree that you placed the Eruvin, that the Mishnah is discussing, the Koi Heicha, exactly where was this tree? Ilema, the Koi Rishus HaYachid. If this tree is in a Rishus HaYachid, well then Mali Lamaila, Mali Lamata. Why is there a difference, like the Mishnah says, between if the Eruv was above 10 Tvachim and it's not a good Eruv, or if the Eruv is within 10 Tvachim and it is a good Eruv? Rishus HaYachid, Oila, Ad L'Rekia. The Rishus HaYachid extends all the way up. So therefore, it's all Rishus HaYachid. So why should there be a problem? Even today. Why would you say today is different? Yeah. You wonder if you're like an airplane on Shabbos and you want to stick your hand out the window? Right. Right. It's important to note, and this is what struck me many times throughout learning Masechet Shabbos, is that Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaRabim has nothing to do with ownership rights. You could stand in the middle of the 401, put up a barrier, and that's a Rishus HaYachid. So it has nothing to do with ownership. It has to do with Rishuyos, how they're designated like Gabi Shabbos. So after Gemara, Ella, the Koi, Rishus HaRabim. This tree is a Rishus HaRabim. So when you're standing near the tree, you're standing in Rishus HaRabim. So therefore, up to 10 Tvachim height in the tree would be considered Rishus HaRabim. Above 10 Tvachim would be considered Rishus HaYachid. And that's the distinction. So let's drill down a little deeper. The Miskaven Lishboy says, where were you trying to be Koinish Shvisa? Were you trying to be Koinish Shvisa in the Rishus HaYachid, or were you trying to be Koinish Shvisa in a Rishus HaRabim? Ilayman in the Miskaven Lishboy Lamaila. If his intention was to be Koinish Shvisa above 10 Tvachim, I'm not sure, maybe he had some type of platform that he was going to be upon, but he wanted to be above 10 Tvachim, he wanted to be in a Rishus HaYachid. So then if you place the Eruv in a tree above 10 Tvachim, why should that be a problem? Who ve'eruvay b'makam echaru? He's in the Rishus HaYachid, he's in the platform that's above 10 Tvachim, and his Eruv is beside him in a tree that's in a Rishus HaYachid because it's above 10 Tvachim. So why does the Mishnah say, Nosnei be'ilan l'may l'mei asar tvachim ein Eruvei Eruv? Elo, you have to say, in the Skaven Lishbois Lamata, his intention was to be Koinish Shvisa in the Rishus HaRabim. So, Frek the Gemara, if that's the case, how could he even take it off the tree? In a case where it's below Asara, so if he's planning to be Lishbois Lamata, so we understand why, he's in Rishus HaRabim, if the Eruv is in the tree that's in the Rishus HaYachid, that's 10 Tvachim high, he's in Rishus HaRabim, the Eruv is in Rishus HaYachid, he can't even bring it to himself, so we understand why it's not an Eruv. But what about the second case of the Mishnah, where it says Lamata Me'asara, it is a good Eruv. How could it be a good Eruv if the Eruv is in the tree? He's using a tree, and you're not allowed to use a tree on Shabbos. So he's not allowed to put things on a tree and take things off a tree on Shabbos. So right there, he can't access his Eruv. Hey,
what do you mean? It's just sitting there in a basket on. What do you mean? Why aren't you allowed to take something off a tree?
The reason why there's an issue of Mishtamish Bilin is because we're afraid he's going to break off part of the tree and use it.
Oh, so it's a Gezer D'Rabbanan.
Correct. The Rishonim, I'll ask Rashi, told you to say, besides that, a tree in Rosh Hashanah that's less than 10 tefachim high, but it's a makam dalad al dalad, is a carmelis. So you couldn't take it off. Forget the fact that it's a tree; it's a carmelis anyway. So Dr. Gemoroh, you're right. That's also a problem. So it's just another way to ask the kasha. The Gemoroh is just saying you cannot access this food on the tree because you're mishtamish be'ilon. Who adin? It's because it's a carmelis. Dr. Gemoroh la'olam the koy. So why didn't the Gemara ask over there? That's correct. Actually, so Shlomi is pointing out very, very accurately that this kasha of mishtamish be'ilon would have been applicable earlier when the Gemara said earlier that in the Havamin, when the Gemara said earlier, if he's standing in a platform in Rosh Hashanah and he has an Eruvin Rosh Hashanah, what's the problem? There could have been a problem, the same problem with mishtamish be'ilon. In fact, that's right. Oh, so Mechi's asking, since somebody else could have used it, why is there a problem if it's in a different rishus? Somebody else could have used it. So the reason why that doesn't help us for Erev, because by Erev there's another rule. You cannot have hu b'makam echad ve'Eruvin b'makam acher. He has to be in the same place as his Erev. But yeah, you're right. That's a very good point. But here too, when they're both Rosh Hashanah, it's also a problem. But the problem is you can't access it. There's a problem. You can't actually get it. You have to be able to get it. So Mech is bringing up a big point. Even though we learned that a Yisrael could make, or anybody, a Nazir could make an Erev with Yayin, that means only if I can get it. I can't say, oh yeah, I want to serve you, go next door and help yourself. That wouldn't work for Erev Tichulim. It has to be that you can access it, even though you're not going to eat it. It's a very good point. The Koy B'Shus Harabim v'Nischavim Lishbois Lamata. He was in B'Shus Harabim and he wanted to access the food also in B'Shus Harabim, and that's where he wants to be kind of shvitza. Okay, so if that's the case, how does that help? I'm still using a tree, and a tree in the abundance also to be misham from the tree. A and B is a tree is a carmelist, like the Rishonim spoke out. I mean, abundance you're not allowed to take from a carmelist to a Rosh Hashanah. So tomorrow Rebbe we're using the sheet of Rebbe, the Amar Kol Dover Shu Mishum Shvus, anything that's also to do on Shabbos because of an Isur Derabanan, Legazur Allah Ben Hashmashah. None of the Isurei Derabanan of Shabbos apply to Ben Hashmashahs. And Rashi tells us because Ben Hashmashahs is only a suffix Shabbos. So if the suffix Shabbos and this is Rabbanon, we're not makbid on Isurei Derabanan by a suffix Shabbos. So therefore, when is the Erev Toifus? The Erev is Toifus Ben Hashmashahs. Ben Hashmashahs, there was no problem with you being Mishtamish Be'ilan to get it. So Ben Hashmashahs, you were able to be Koinish Shvisa near that tree. Your Erev was good. And yeah, once Shabbos comes, you can't access it anymore. But it doesn't matter. Once you're Koinish Shvisa by Ben Hashmashahs, you've already established your place. And it's not a concern if actually on Shabbos, because of the Rabbanon, you're prevented from taking your Erev off the tree. On Shabbos, you can't take it off the tree. Ben Hashmashahs, you are allowed to take it off the tree. But once you were calling Shvisa Ben Hashmashahs, so now this is your place. Therefore, it's good for the food. So Amar Lahu. See, now you know why yesterday you can't send a kid to do this. This is very technical. You got to put it in the right place. It's not the Gemara. The Gemara says yes to the son. Amar Lahu Reb Nachman. So Reb Nachman was listening to this conversation between the three Amoraim. Right? Who was talking there? It was Reb Chia bar Abba, Reb Asi, and Reb bar Nosson. So Reb Nachman listened to the Shakla Tire. He saw Talmudic logic in action, how through their pilpul they were able to clarify precisely what the Mishnah was talking about. He said, "Yeah, sure, good for you. You got good pshat." The Chain Amar Shmuel also learned pshat in the Mishnah like that. Amrulay, they told him, "Pisrisu ba kulahai." Even Shmuel dug down and harved on this Mishnah in such great detail to flush out precisely what the Mishnah is talking about. So Rav Nachman said, "What are you talking about? You did it. Why is that so strange? You just went through the same process. So why would you be surprised that somebody else would have done that?" This is what they told Rav Nachman. Not that he worked on it. Of course you worked on it. Rather, kavisa le b'gemara. Is this how you finally established to learn pshat? It doesn't literally mean that you write it down in the Gemara, because they didn't have Gemara to write in those days. But there was a time where they were living the Gemara. So they asked Rav Nachman, did you be koivei that this is pshat in the Mishnah? Amalu in, yes, that is pshat. Itmar nami Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Yes.
One thing that we also learned from the Gemara is the Gemara used a bunch of extra words. We said the Gemara said Yosy was key of our Alpha, the Asi, the Rov of our Yosy, and then it says the Yosy was not in the Zavai. Right? It could be, I believe it could be a lot less words to tell us what was going on. However, it did tell us that the Nazim came afterwards. Right? Like the Nazim was not originally part of this Agudah.
First they started the shmuz there. Rav Nachman like pulled the chair over.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Like that. But definitely the Nazim was not part of the original Agudah.
I hear.
And you see that he kept quiet, right? He didn't interrupt until he finished speaking.
Okay, so he quietly watched in admiration as
Right. He didn't, when you see one of the guys coming over a shoe, right away he opened up the big mouth. Right? Whereas the Nazim didn't do that. He let everybody speak. He let them come to the conclusion. But then when they finished, he had what to say.
very. As I think of Leland, you don't always have to interrupt into a conversation. You can sit silently and listen to what's going on. Very nice. You hear Chaim Chi's diak from the Gemara? It's a good diak. So Zak the Gemara. Itmar nami Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel Hacha be'ilan ha'oimid b'shus harabim askinan Gavoya Asara 10 tvachim high V'rachav arba, and it's 4 tvachim, so that's why it becomes a rishus b'nei atzmai. V'nischaven lishbois lamata, and his intent was to make Shabbos down in the rishus harabim. So if the Erev is above 10 tvachim, it's taking from rishus yachid rishus harabim. Therefore, two b'makom echad in rishus harabim ve'ruba b'makom achad rishus yachid. That's why it's not a good Erev. But in the second half of the Mishnah, where he placed it on the tree lower than 10 tvachim, there it's a good Erev. How does he access it? On Shabbos he cannot, but ben hashmashos he could, because v'rebehi the amar kol davar shu mishum shus loy gozer alav ben hashmashos. So that's shot of the Mishnah, but we're not yet out of the woods, because Rava comes to add one more condition in order for us to be able to understand the Mishnah. And Rava says, and this introduces a concept that I found a little bit difficult to grasp, but maybe when we learn it together, it'll be clearer to me. Amar Rava, loy shanu, this that our Mishnah says, that above 10, you cannot use the Erev. Below 10, you could use the Erev. That's only if this tree is out of the Ibura Shalir. Ibura Shalir means is up, even though you're out of the city limits, any structure that's within 70 amas and a bit, so anything within approximately 70 amas from the city is still considered within the city. And we learned that if there's like a hut within 70 amas of the city, and then 70 amas later there's another hut, technically you're going to be extending the perimeter of the city further and further by adding these huts. But you always have the space of just 70 amas and a bit to include in the perimeter of the city. So our mission is only talking about an Elon that's out of the perimeter of the city completely. If this tree was in the perimeter of the city, even though it was technically in Harishus Harabim, nevertheless, even if you're on the ground in the Rishus Harabim, and your Erev is on the tree above 10 tvachim, which would technically be a Rishus HaYachid, Harei Ze Erev, it would be considered an Erev. Zot Rava a bombadik echilish, that the Masa command the Mal Yidam. A city is always considered like it's filled. So you're always in any airspace you want to be. which means even though my Erev is above 10 Tvachim, we consider it like I'm also above 10 Tvachim. It's a very chiddush concept, and therefore I'd like to see Rashi inside. Can I see Rashi inside? We look at a city as if it's filled up, as if its airspace is filled up. So I'm not standing on the floor, I'm standing 10 feet from the ground, or wherever I need to be in height. My altitude can be whatever I want it to be. So let's just see Rashi. The Masa, mitoich shenu kafes yishuv mechitzos, since it's surrounded by a yishuv yishuv is inhabitants and mechitzos. Now, the city might have mechitzos, but we're here in the Ibur Shalir, we're definitely not within the mechitzos. But nevertheless, the Ein Magul, it's not considered completely exposed. Chazinala, we view all of the land associated with the city is command the Malya Afra, as if it was full of offer. And therefore, have a command in the Schaven Lishbois Lamaila Meyasar. My altitude is anywhere it needs to be. That's how you look. When you're inside a city, your altitude is wherever it needs to be. That's right. Right. In the old city, you could be anywhere from way below the ground to above the ground, and you're in the same place. If the Alpha God, the boy Lemishkalei, even though halachically it doesn't change the status of the land from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, the Elon Rosh Hashanah, the Gaba Haitzah, the Elon is Rosh Hashanah, the Tachtov and the area underneath it is Rosh Hashanah. So even though I might make believe like I'm floating up in the air above 10 Tfachim, L'gabe Hilchos Erev Kumen, but I still can't get it. Nevertheless, Chazinan L'mokam Shvisasoi, Ki Ilu Hu Gavaya, as if he's at a higher altitude above 10 Tfachim, L'mahava, Ki Ilu Nischavan Lishbois L'mayla, it's as if his kavanah was to be Shovis above 10 Tfachim, V'yikn La'er. So this is like an off-the-charts chiddush to me. I had a problem grasping it. If you say something over, the Democrats taught us when you say something over more and more, it becomes more understandable. So, what it's saying is since it's within the perimeter of the city, and it's not even within the perimeter, it's within the influence area of the city, right? We will Lagabe Hilchas Eruvin, we'll look at it like it's Masa Command the Malyadami, and I'm in the Rosh Hashanah together with my Erev, even though the mice I'm on the ground and I'm in Rosh Hashanah and I can't even get my Erev. Zok to Gemara, if that's what the Rav is saying, that our mission is limited to such a case, well then Ihachi Chutz Li Bura Shalir Nami. So then even if my Erev is out of the confines of the city, which now includes everywhere in the world, because you're either in a city or out of a city, you should have the same halacha. Because even the Amar Rava said a very interesting halacha, that when you make an Erev, when you're Konya Shvisa and you're Konya your Dalet al Dalet, you made yourself like a quasi little city there. So now, on your perimeter, your 4 amos radius, you also say oila adler, just like a city. Even though Merava nice and Eruvin, yeshli arba amos. Now he has dalet al dalet. He has a radius of 4 amos. Well, then havila rishus hayochid, not a rishus hayochid the gabi tzoi Shabbos, but the gabi this idea of Erev that I'm parked here and now I make myself a little habitat, and therefore rishus hayochid oila adler. So if I'm standing in the middle of nowhere, and I made an Erev near my tree, well, now my Dalet al Dalet goes up to Adler Kia, which would now make me be in the same place as my Erev. So now we have a problem. How are we going to understand our Mishnah? How is there ever a problem if I put the Erev above 10 Tfachim? Since I'm parked over here, it now makes it as if I'm at any altitude. So now I'm up in the Rosh Hashanah as well. No, even if you're underneath the tree. It's not a kinyan. It's not a kinyan. We consider it your domain. Well, yeah, you are. Below, anything below 10 Tefachim will do Rishus HaRabban. Anything above will do Rishus HaYachid. Right. That's right. But I'm not really Koine. Does he say it's Koine? It's like Rosh Hashanah. Doesn't it? We're saying this is your personal space now. I don't care.
That means if your Elul is somewhere hovering above you, now you're in the same position. You know the problem.
even if it's not hovering above you, even if it's over, but it's above 10, yeah. So it's a very big chiddush. But at the end of the day, once you adapt this chiddush, we have a problem. Why is there ever a problem with the Erev? Even if you put it Lamai Lamiyu. That is our problem. No, he doesn't. We're going to soon see. He does not have to be able to reach within his arms. We're going to soon see. It could be pretty far. Actually. We're going to soon see. The Gemara. We're about to get to the punchline, and that's what the Gemara is going to say. So let's have a look at that. So even on Rabbi Nois Neruvi Yesh LaArba'am is Havel Rishus HaYachid Oila Ad Rekiya. Again, this is very complicated. It's difficult to understand. So it's okay. I want to quickly run through Rashi to clarify this. Even though Rabbi Nois Neruvi Lakama by a Pirka, and Daf Lamed Hey, it says that when this galgal chutz l'tchum, if you have an object that's rolled out of the tchum, the katani masnisen eina erev. You know, this is a little bit out of our scope. I'd rather just look at the next Rashi. Even if you place the Erev above 10, we consider him and his Erev to be in Rishus HaYachid, even though he's standing on the floor in Rishus HaRabbi. Zok Rashi, even though we're not saying that he has his status is that of Rishus HaYachid, that he could take from the Elon above 10 Tvachim, because of course no one's going to suggest that. So like a mechitza, without barriers, you know that it's a Rishus HaRabbi where he is. So Lagabe Haitzah Rishus L'Shus, you're in two different Rishuyas. You're in Rishus HaRabbi, and your Erev is Rishus HaYachid if it's above 10 Tvachim. But Lagabe, the restriction that by Erev Tchumen, it needs to be Hu Ve'eruv B'Makam Echad. Lagabe that we consider it Chad Rishusya. Dumya the Noisen B'Ibur Shalir, just like when the tree was within the confines of the city, the Chazil Rava commanded Malya. Rava viewed it Lagabe Hilchos Eruvin as if he's in the same Makom. So you're asking a very good question. Since I cannot access it on Shabbos, how in the world am I going to bring it to me, right? So vice versa, that's not at this point the Gemara seems to say that that's not going to be a problem because it's Huvei Ruben Malcolm Echad. But the problem is now because of that we don't have a pshat in our Mishnah anymore. How do we understand the Mishnah? What's the difference if it's above 10 or below 10? Once I don't have to get to it, what's pshat in our Mishnah? So because of that, the Gemara really now gets to a more complicated case. What we're discussing here is a tree that has branches, so its trunk is planted firmly in the Rishus HaRabbi, and it has a branch that extends more than 4 amas away from the tree, which is common. So we're not talking about above and below. We're talking about if we're close to the tree or if the branch that you're putting your Erev on is far away from the trunk of the tree. We're talking about a tree that it sticks out, its branches stick out very far. And Rashi adds the last line, the last words of Rashi. And you were standing under the tree, and where on the branch did you place your Erev? More than 4 amas away from the tree. I'm sorry? From the trunk, that's correct. And you wanted to spend your Shabbos by the trunk. So let's see how Rashi elaborates. How do the chips fall? If you're within 10 tvachim, Eruv, it's a good Erev. The Matzi. Now let's talk about it. My Erev is more than 4 amas away from me because I'm by the trunk, and this might be 20 feet away at the other end of the branch. So Zok Rashi, if the place on the branch where it is below 10 tefachim, meaning it's in the Rishus HaRabbi, I'm not allowed to. Do we ask the question? How am I supposed to access my Erev? I can't carry something 4 amas from Rishus HaRabbi. So what I could do is the motzi nofikle chutl dal moisot. I could get to it, and I could go all the way over there. Kamadaboy ulamishkale. I can, let's say it's 20 feet at the end of the branch. I can go 20 feet. I'm in the Rosh Hashanah. I'm allowed to walk there. I can walk 20 feet to get my Erev. By Suya, and I can bring it to me. How could I bring it to me? You're not allowed to be Mavir Dalar Amis, Rosh Hashanah. Zok Rashi by Suya, Pachos Midalar Amis. Add the type of Dalar Amis, you have to pick it up, carry it 2 feet, stop, and rest. Pick it up again. So you have a way to get it to you. Even though we're saying that where his area is up to 4 amas is considered like a Rosh Hashanah. So how can you bring it from that Rosh Hashanah into Rosh Hashanah? So Gemoroh, the same thing. Zok Rashi, the same thing we've been stressing. La Rosh Hashanah Gemoroh he. That area that he created with his Erev, that Dalad al Dalad that he created with his Erev, doesn't make it a halachic Rosh Hashanah the Gabi Haitzah. Shelo yuchal lahavi mechutza lahen lasoichan. So la mechitza ikra. V'loi chilek reshusika. There's not the technical separation between Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah that's required that would create an Isser Haitzah on Shabbos. So technically, L'gabe Haitzah b'Shabbos, I'm in the Rosh Hashanah, even though L'gabe Eruvin, we consider it my personal space, and therefore I'd be allowed to go past the 4 amas and bring my Erev to me. Uman kamash v'lehu bayis, what made it into a bayis, what's making it into Rosh Hashanah? Erevu demashv'lei. And that's not making it into a Rosh Hashanah, technically, L'gabe Hilchos Haitzah. The V'chi Ichvin, L'bayis the Atera Ichvin, V'loi L'shavya Bayis the Yisura. So Rashi is telling us another interesting twist. Rashi is telling a reason why it doesn't make it a real Rosh Hashanah, because even when I want to establish my place here and make this into my bayis and become Shvisa here for Shabbos, my kavanah is to make it better for myself, to make it mutter, not to make it also. So if I would make that into Rosh Hashanah mamish, then it would cause Isser. Now, I'm not sure why Rashi has to speak that out. What's the difference? What my kavanah is? If I didn't make a barrier, if I didn't make a mechitza around me, it's not technically Rosh Hashanah. But Rashi also throws in this far, and I'm not sure why. So that's why if it's l'matam, it's a good erev, because even though it's more than 4 amas away from you, you can go get it. But if l'maylam yud, if on the branch it was above 10 tvachim, then ein eruv, then it's not an erev. Because when you go take it from the area of the branch that's above 10 tvachim, and you bring it down to you, and you're in Rosh Hashanah, well, the common parach, the Gemara is going to ask later, so we'll get to that in a second. Well, right now we don't have a problem. Right now we're at the point where we're good. The Gemara says that the case of our Mishnah. So let's review. So what's the case of our Mishnah? You're in a tree. You're by a tree that's in the middle of nowhere. It's not in the confines of the city, and we had a problem that anywhere in my Dalar Amis is considered where I am. The teretz is it's not in my Dalar Amis. It's this object is 20 feet away from me on the branch. So if the branch is below 10, I can access it, and it's a good area. It's above 10, I can't access it because even though we look away from an issue of of Mishtamish Bilam or even Mishtamish Bekarmelis, but here it's in a Rosh Hashanah Mamish. That's a deraisa. It's a deraisa to move an object from a Rosh Hashanah to a Rosh Hashanah. That's a Mamish a deraisa that we wouldn't be able to get around, even by Nishmach. So that's part of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is not speaking about a regular tree. It's speaking about a tree that has a very huge radius. And the Erev is more than 4 amas away from you. If it's a Rosh Hashanah, you can't get to it. And therefore, so if it's above 10 tefachim, you can't get to it, therefore it's not a good Erev. But it's below 10 tefachim, and you could get to it, and then it is a good Erev. So Zok more about it. So what do you mean if you put it l'mayla me sarat v'achim or l'mata me sarat v'achim? Zok Rashi v'dover hanoita shavahu. We're not talking about a branch that's moving up. So the question is, where on the tree do you put it? We're talking about a branch that's exiting the tree horizontally, right? It's moving away from the tree. So the question shouldn't have been l'mayla l'mata, because the shaila really is, we're not talking about the same tree anymore. We're not talking about the same tree. We're talking about if this branch was taken out horizontally, if that branch happens to be lower than 10 tefachim, because the branch is at the same level, its entire stretch. If it's below 10 tefachim, then it's a good area. If this branch happens to be above 10 tefachim, so we're not talking about where on the branch you're placing your area. Now we're discussing where the branch is, right? So frag the Gemara, umay l'mayla ulamata. It doesn't make sense to use the nusach l'mayla ulamata. Rashi says what it should have used was the lashon gavoya v'nama. If the branch is gavoya, then it's not a gavoya. If the branch is namuch, then it would be go there. But that's not what that's not what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah uses the word l'mayla lamata, which indicates that it's on the same branch, and we're just discussing what's the position on the branch. So that's why no problem to have the zakim. After the branch extended out for amis, it turned and it moved up, like you see in the picture, and it's quite normal for branches to work that way. so lamata would be, again, it would still be 4 amis. It would still be 4 amis away from the tree, but it's below the level of 10 tefachim, or it would still be more than 4 amis away from the tree, maybe even further, but it would also be higher. So this is where you can have both positions on one branch, and the branch started off going horizontally, but after it left the 4 amma radius, it changed directions to go vertically. Why can't he reach over to the tree, even though I'm in Rosh Hashanah? Let me reach over to the tree, lift it up above the tree, and bring it over to me. Zok Rashi, he have a chutel that al amas nami ulamayla miyud, even if it was above 10 tefachim and it was further than 4 amas, even the dalat amois of oilus adler rekia rishus yochid, since his perimeter now is oilus adler rekia, what he could do is hare yochel lalos leilan, and we're talking about the shmoshes. Hare yochel lalos leilan adler mayla miyasar. He can climb up the tree until he's above 10 tefachim, because he's allowed to be there. Now he is physically in the rishus yochid for hilchos eitzah. And then the litlay, and now he can just reach over and take the Eruv that's on a branch that's in Rosh Hashanah, because it's above 10 tefachim, and they can bring it over to himself, and that's also Rosh Hashanah. The kala ilan me'asar l'mayla, any part of the tree that's above 10 tefachim from the ground is a Rosh Hashanah. He can bring it to where he is, and then he can climb back down. So what's the problem? So Gemara, I'll tell you the problem. It's speaking, so this case of the Mishnah is getting less and less broad. It's Kisharabim Mekastim. It's speaking where that branch that was running horizontally is Rosh Hashanah, because people lean on it. Many people in Rosh Hashanah is at a perfect height where people could take advantage of it and people use it. And that makes them Rosh Hashanah. So even though I could stand up high, I can climb up high on the tree and be in Rosh Hashanah and lean over and bring it, it's located in the Rosh Hashanah. I'm in Rosh Hashanah. But the area in between on the branch that people lean on is considered the Rosh Hashanah. I'm not allowed to reach over and bring from one Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah if it's going through a Rosh Hashanah. Similar to the wagons, when they passed crushing from one wagon to the next by the Mishkan, they were passing it from one Rosh Hashanah, which is one wagon, to the other Rosh Hashanah, which is to the next wagon, and they passed it through Rosh Hashanah, and that's usher. What if you have a post that's 9 tefachim high in Rosh Hashanah? So normally you would say it's a carmelis, but zokt ula v'rabim makasmel, if this post that would normally be considered a carmelis, which is like a Rosh Hashanah, like a separate Rosh, if everyone leans on it and everybody in Rosh Hashanah uses it, it's in a very good position to lean on, to put stuff on, the perfect height. V'zorak v'noch al gabav, and you threw something dalad amis b'Rosh Hashanah, and it landed on top of this post, chayiv, you're chayiv for being moitzim mishus l'shus, because it landed 4 amos later in Rosh Hashanah. So you see that something that even though it's above the ground, it wouldn't be considered a carmelis, it would be considered a Rosh Hashanah. If it's something that people in the Rosh Hashanah use, it becomes a Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, you won't be able to pass it over. So the halacha l'maisa pshat of our Mishnah is, you're standing in front of a tree, it's the middle of nowhere, and its branches extend more than 4 amos out horizontally, then it turns up vertically. The branch, when it's running across horizontally is about 9 tefachim high. You put your object on it, there's no problem. It's a good Eruv because you're in Rosh Hashanah, your Eruv is Rosh Hashanah, you can get to it. It's a good Eruv. But if the object that you put, the food that you place for your Eruv Tchumen was on the branch high up, above 10 tefachim, and it's out of your 4 arm radius, then it's considered hu b'makom echad. Not get to the Eruv, you wouldn't be able to bring it over to him because even though he could in a virtual way be above 4 tefachim, be high up in the Rosh Hashanah, he can't even get it from that Rosh Hashanah to him, even if he reached over to get it, because he's going to have to traverse the airspace of Rosh Hashanah, and the halacha is that is also it's also to pass something through Rosh Hashanah from one Rosh Hashanah to the next. I guess we should stop here.
Before we stop, we did have a sponsor who came on, like buying a ticket on a train during the ride. He asked to sponsor it, so I'm going to read it now. Let's see what we have here. Where did I go? Here. Today's broadcast sponsored by Bensi Ben Shalilu Nishmas, his grandmother Rachel Bas Shloimi Kusiel Aleh Shalom. Your site is today.
Thank you.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Oh, today's broadcast. We have to announce, by the way, Yosy, when you announce that today's broadcast, you should announce the title of the shir. So Gemoroh Kup by Let's DAF at the Agudah with Rabbi Yosy Simon, the 21st of Elul, is sponsored by Bensi Ben Shalilu Nishmas, his grandmother.
Gemoroh Kup. Okay, that's what we'll call
Gemoroh Kup. Is that okay?
Well, how about Talmudic logic? Gemoroh Kup.
It's the same thing. That's a Gemoroh
I like
Kup,
it.
isn't it?
There's a coffee shop that's named after it. It's called the Second Cup, Yiddish Cup, and the Gemoroh Kup.
Gemoroh Kup. Okay.
Okay, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.